The scream cut through the salon like a knife. One moment, the room was full of laughter, hair dryers humming, and soft music playing. The next moment, everything stopped. A sharp sound hit the floor, and a small glass object rolled across the tiles, breaking into pieces. Customers jumped to their feet. Some grabbed their bags. Others stood frozen, their eyes wide with fear. Madame Jen stood in the middle of it all, her hands shaking, her heart beating fast. She looked down at the broken pieces and felt a cold fear rise in her chest. Someone had tried to ruin her place. Someone wanted her down. The door to the salon was still open. Outside, people were waiting in line, not knowing what had just happened inside. Madame Jen slowly raised her head and looked around. Faces stared back at her, fearful, confused, angry. One woman whispered, "This place is not safe." Another said, "Let's go." For a brief moment, Madame Jen felt weak. 8 years of hard work flashed before her eyes. Long nights, tired hands, silent prayers. Was this how everything would end? With one strange moment that could destroy her name forever? She took a deep breath and lifted her voice, calm but heavy with emotion. "Please," she said softly, "no one is hurt. Let me clean this." Her voice was steady, but her heart was not. Inside her mind, questions screamed. Who would do this? Why today? Why now, when her salon was fuller than ever? As she bent to sweep the broken glass, her eyes caught something strange among the pieces. A mark she had never seen before. Her stomach turned. This was not an accident. This was planned. As the customers slowly sat back down, Madame Jen forced a small smile. But inside, fear mixed with deep sadness. She knew someone close understood her routine too well. Someone who knew her shop. Someone who had watched her rise with angry eyes. As the salon returned to its noisy rhythm, Madame Jen whispered to herself, almost like a promise, "Truth always finds its way." She did not know it yet, but this moment was only the beginning. A storm was coming. One born from jealousy, fed by greed, and aimed straight at her clean heart. If you love suspense, drama, and shocking twists, hit that subscribe button now. Don't miss a single story. Long before the fear of that morning, Madame Jen's salon was known for one simple thing: care. When people spoke about her shop, they did not first talk about money or fame. They talked about how clean it was. The floor always shined. The chairs were always neat. The tools were always washed and arranged carefully. Madame Jen believed that when a place was clean, good things stayed there. Every morning, she arrived before anyone else. She swept, wiped, prayed quietly, and prepared her hands for the day. She treated hair like it was something precious, not something to rush. Customers noticed this from the very beginning. Some came once and never left. Others traveled far just to sit in her chair. Madame Jen listened when people spoke. She smiled when they were sad. She worked slowly, carefully, never cutting corners. If a style did not look right, she fixed it, even if it meant staying late. Many times, she refused extra money saying, "I want you to be happy, not rushed." Over time, people stopped calling her shop just a salon. They started calling it the place. The place where beauty lasted. The place where peace lived. Fame did not come fast. For years, Madame Jen struggled quietly. Some days, only one customer came. Other days, none came at all. But she never complained. She trusted the work of her hands. She trusted time. Slowly, word spread. People shared pictures. Friends told friends. Soon, the shop that once felt empty became too small. Lines formed outside. Some days, she worked until her fingers ached. Yet, she never lost her kindness. She treated every head the same, rich or poor, young or old. By the 8th year, her salon had become the biggest around. People called her a celebrity hairstylist. But Madame Jen never liked the word celebrity. She still wore simple clothes. She still swept her own floor. She still thanked every customer. What people did not know was this: her success was not built on luck or secrets. It was built on patience, honesty, and a heart that refused to be dirty. But while many admired her rise, one person watched with quiet anger. And that person was learning to hate what they could not become. Lizzy was once like a younger sister in Madame Jen's salon. When she first came, her eyes were full of hope. She watched every move Madame Jen made. How she held the scissors. How she spoke softly to customers. How she cleaned her tools again and again. At first, Lizzy worked hard. She swept the floor, washed hair, and stayed quiet learning. Madame Jen trusted her. She corrected her gently and always said, "Time will teach you more than speed." But Lizzy did not like time. She wanted praise quickly. She wanted customers to notice her now. As the salon grew famous, something changed inside Lizzy. She began to count customers. She watched how people smiled at Madame Jen. Each compliment felt like a stone in her chest. When customers asked only for Madame Jen, Lizzy forced a smile, but her heart burned. At night, she went home tired, not from work, but from anger. "Why her?" she whispered to herself. "I work too. I know how to do hair too." Slowly, respect turned into jealousy. Learning turned into bitterness. One evening, after the shop had closed, Lizzy exploded. She told Madame Jen she was tired of being hidden. She said the salon's success was luck, not effort. Madame Jen listened quietly, her eyes filled with sadness. She tried to explain that growth takes patience. She warned Lizzy not to rush her destiny. But Lizzy had already decided. Her voice shook as she said, "I will open my own salon. People will see my talent." She walked out without looking back. Madame Jen stood alone, feeling a deep ache she could not explain. Days later, Lizzy opened her own salon. She painted the walls bright. She hung a big sign. She sat proudly, waiting. Morning passed. Afternoon passed. No footsteps came. From her chair, she could see Madame Jen's shop across the street, full as always. Laughter floated through the air. Lizzy's heart sank. Something dark began to grow inside her. She did not know it yet, but this quiet failure would push her toward a choice that would change everything. Days turned into weeks, and Lizzy's salon remained empty. Not a single customer came through the doors. She had imagined lines of people waiting to sit in her chair, praising her skill, admiring her talent, but reality was cruel. Each empty chair whispered her failure back to her. She watched from the window as Madame Jen's salon overflowed with laughter, chatter, and shiny hair that shone under the lights. Every satisfied customer was a silent reminder of what Lizzy could not achieve. Her heart thumped with jealousy and shame. Nights, she tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, thinking, "How can this happen? I am talented. I worked hard. Why am I alone?" Her anger began to eat her from the inside. Every social media post, every advertisement she sent out, seemed useless. Friends told her to be patient, but patience had become unbearable. She started questioning her worth. "Maybe people are blind," she whispered to herself one night, her voice trembling with bitterness. "Maybe the world doesn't notice talent anymore." And then, deep inside, a thought darker than fear crept in, a thought she had always denied. If hard work does not bring reward, maybe there is another way. She did not understand yet how dangerous that thought was. Lizzy began walking past Madame Jen's shop every day, hiding behind a wall or a car, watching her former mentor. She noticed the patterns, the smiles, the secrets in the way Madame Jen treated people. It all seemed unfair. "Why her and not me?" she muttered, fists clenched. The envy twisted her heart. She felt invisible to the world while Madame Jen's fame and warmth seemed to shine like the sun, bright, untouchable. With every glance, Lizzy's hatred grew, almost like a fire that could not be extinguished. One evening, after everyone had left her salon, Lizzy sat in the dark, staring at the empty chairs. The silence was deafening. And then she made a choice. A quiet, dangerous choice. She would do something, anything, to take back what she believed was hers. She whispered into the shadows of her empty shop, "If I can't rise like her, I'll find another way, even if it's not clean." In that moment, a storm began inside her, a storm that would soon collide with Madame Jen's world. And no one knew how far Lizzy was willing to go. The story is about to get even darker. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next. Night had fallen, and Lizzy sat alone in her empty salon. The lights were dim, casting long shadows on the walls, and the silence felt heavier than any scream. Her fingers traced the empty chairs, and a bitter thought twisted in her heart. Why does she have everything, and I have nothing? Her lips tightened, her jaw clenched, and a storm brewed in her chest. She remembered the laughter spilling from Madame Jen's salon across the street, the long line of waiting customers, the praise her former mentor received. Each memory was a needle, piercing her pride, and planting seeds of something dangerous. It started with whispers she could barely hear, suggestions from people who promised power, fame, and influence without effort. Just a small step, they said. No one will notice. Lizzy's mind raced. She had always believed in talent, skill, and hard work, but now, desperation had turned her patience into shame. She wondered if a shortcut could finally give her what she had longed for. The thought made her pulse quicken, both thrilling and terrifying her at the same time. If I do this, if I finally act, maybe I can take what should have been mine, she whispered, almost afraid of the sound of her own voice. Over the next few days, Lizzy began her secret preparations. She practiced strange rituals she did not fully understand, whispered lies into the shadows, and observed Madame Jen's routines meticulously. Every step Madame Jen took, every customer she served, became a blueprint in Lizzy's mind. She convinced herself it was harmless at first, just a nudge here, a small trick there, but deep down, her heart grew heavier with every act. Fear and excitement danced together, and a chill settled over her, unnoticed by anyone else. Her plan was forming, slow but deliberate, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Yet even as she plotted, a tiny part of her felt uneasy. Sometimes, she paused and looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were not the same, they were sharp, dark, and restless. She could not recognize the person staring back. Is this who I am becoming? She thought. But the answer terrified her more than the question. She had already crossed the first line. And in crossing it, she had unknowingly begun a chain of events that would change everything. Not just for Madame Jen, but for herself. The storm of envy, greed, and dark ambition had begun, and soon, no one could escape its reach. The next morning, Lizzy's salon was quiet, eerily quiet. She stood at the counter, heart hammering, hands trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Today was the day she would act. She had prepared everything the night before. Strange symbols drawn on scraps of paper, whispered instructions memorized, tiny objects placed in precise positions around the salon. She told herself this was just a way to balance the scales, to claim what she believed was rightfully hers. No one will see it. No one will know. I will finally rise, she whispered, biting her lip. Her reflection in the cracked mirror made her flinch. There was something in her eyes now, something colder than before. Meanwhile, across the street, Madame Jen's salon buzzed as usual. Customers laughed, music played, and the smell of fresh shampoo filled the air. Madame Jen moved gracefully from one chair to another, unaware of the shadow looming so close. Her calmness, her kindness, and her tireless care had made the shop shine brighter than ever. Lizzy watched from behind the curtain, stomach twisting, her envy sharp and bitter. She set the plan in motion. She left small objects in the path of Madame Jen's salon, things meant to distract, scare, or sabotage, but inside a part of her shivered. This is just the first step, she told herself. It's harmless, for now. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Lizzy felt a surge of hope. Maybe the plan was working. She imagined customers leaving Madame Jen's shop, whispers of trouble spreading, and her salon suddenly overflowing with people. But slowly, small things began to go wrong. A candle she had placed toppled over, spilling wax across her own counter. A charm she thought would shift energy caught fire, melting and leaving a foul smell in the air. Lizzy froze, eyes wide, heart pounding. Something was not right. This was supposed to be her moment of triumph. Instead, she felt fear creeping in, cold and sharp, wrapping around her chest. Why isn't it working? She muttered, shaking. By evening, Lizzy's salon felt cursed. Every step she took, every object she touched seemed to betray her. Her phone rang only once, a friend calling to cancel an appointment. Customers stayed away, whispering nervously about bad luck and strange smells. Meanwhile, across the street, Madame Jen's salon thrived as usual, calm and radiant. Lizzy's heart twisted with panic and anger. She had tried to control what she could not, to force what only patience and purity could earn. And now, the first cracks were showing. Her plan was backfiring. The shadow she had welcomed into her heart was consuming her instead of helping her. She sank into a chair, head in her hands, realizing that for the first time in her life, she might have created a storm she could not escape. The morning light poured through the windows of both salons, but the contrast could not have been sharper. Madame Jen's salon was alive, bustling, and full of laughter as usual. Hair dryers hummed, customers chatted excitedly, and the scent of fresh shampoo floated in the air. Across the street, Lizzy's salon sat silent and dim. Empty chairs reflected her anxious face, and the faint smell of burnt wax lingered in the corners. She had tried everything, every trick, every whispered charm, every shortcut, but nothing worked. The harder she pushed, the more her own life seemed to unravel. Her hands shook as she picked up a chair that had fallen overnight. Her plan, which had seemed clever and powerful, had turned into a trap of her own making. Clients cancelled appointments, deliveries went missing, and every object she touched seemed to betray her. Fear, shame, and anger gnawed at her all at once. She realized in a sudden, crushing moment that the harm she had tried to bring upon Madame Jen had only reflected back on her. Every lie, every scheme, every dark thought had built a wall around her heart, cutting her off from the success she had so desperately wanted. And yet, across the street, Madame Jen worked as if nothing had ever happened, calm, radiant, and untouched. Unable to bear it any longer, Lizzy fled to the street and watched from the sidewalk. Madame Jen noticed her standing there, a shadow of the girl she had once mentored, and her expression softened. She did not shout, accuse, or scold. Instead, she continued her work, moving gracefully from chair to chair, smiling, listening, caring. Customers praised her, and new faces entered the shop, drawn by the same reputation Lizzy had tried to destroy. It was clear, a clean heart, patience, and dedication could never be defeated by jealousy or darkness. Lizzy felt something break inside her, a mixture of relief, sorrow, and unbearable regret. Finally, Lizzy returned to her empty salon, sinking to the floor. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I thought I could take shortcuts. I thought I could force success. I was wrong." In that moment, she understood the lesson Madame Jen had lived by all these years. True power comes not from schemes or envy, but from patience, hard work, and a pure heart. Madame Jen's doors remained open, welcoming all, shining brighter than ever, while Lizzy learned the hard truth that darkness only destroys those who embrace it. And so the story ended, echoing a timeless truth that would be remembered by anyone who had ever wished to rise above others without walking the long, honest path. A clean heart is louder than any evil plan, and patience builds what greed can never touch. If Madame Jen's story inspired you, subscribe and join us for more thrilling stories that teach powerful lessons.